Cloud. We are good and live.
Great.
Later.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome back. Hope you are all stretched out and flexible after the yoga session. Huge thank you to Julia Gravano for leading our daily diversion. So we want to thank you all for showing up each day of the conference so far and for giving our virtual event speakers the audience and attention that they deserve. We also want to thank you for showing up on our FM community website, for taking part in the discussions, introducing yourselves, asking questions, and visiting our exhibitors. So huge thanks to everyone who's participating there as well. We would like to thank Corporate Care, Fort Point Project Management, Margulies Peruzzi, Timberline Construction, and VVA Cost and Project Managers for their help in underwriting this year's conference. The format will continue in this session with breakouts and polls, but unlike our other sessions, this one is all about you and your thoughts. So welcome to this afternoon's roundtable. Today's roundtable is going to be moderated by our fearless, fabulous FMForward co-chairs, Don Borden of Facilities PM and Tom Hamill of William B. Meyer, one of our exhibiting partners. Take it away, Don and Tom.
Hey, well, hello everybody. And for those of you who are counting, we're gonna throw out the number now. This is our 7th return to office roundtable. We had 2 of them in March when we knew we were going to go back, and then when we realized we weren't, we had 2 more in May, thinking we're going to go back. We had 1 in August, and then we also had 1 in October. So this is the first return to office, return to workplace of 2021. So what we're really looking for here is kind of what your thoughts are, what your company's plans are, where do you think things are going? And this is going to be a very interactive discussion. Because of the size of the group, we're going to have to do some breakouts. You know, we're going to move to breakout number 1. Breakout number 1 is, well, why don't we do the poll first, Ashley? We'll do the first poll first. And that is, how best would you describe your organization? So, you know, take a look and click, and let's just see who we have on here.
Results are still coming in.
Beautiful. And again, the idea is we want to understand, what are you guys seeing on the ground in your organizations? What are you hearing with the people you network with? How fast do we think this is going to open up? And are we going to have another one of these? Oh, look at that, corporate. So we got 70%, but we've got manufacturing and life sciences, higher ed and K through 12. So we've got a good representation here, but the majority of our poll people have responded as corporate. So with that, let's go into the first breakout session, and let's go ahead.
42.
Okay.
Just want to confirm your and John's thoughts for numbers. Thinking 4. Yeah, that's what my thought too. Okay.
Excellent.
Same page. Give me 1 sec, everyone.
Okay, and what we're going to look at is
what you're doing that. Why don't we tell you what the breakout question is?
Yeah.
That's perfect.
All right. While you're doing that, do you see a new normal in the future? What percentage of the workforce, of your workforce, do you think is going to be back in the building full time? And is there a mark you want to hit before you get there? You know, what are your signposts? What are the markers that you're looking for that say, yeah, it's good to go. We can get back into the office.
Sorry, I had to rename them. Okay.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna do this live.
That's what we're doing. We're doing this all live.
I think I put everyone in one room though. Hold on.
And the new normal is this kind of stuff, which is we're all trying to just get through the technical glitches and pushing forward so that someday we can be back in the office. There we are. Okay.
Hoping to see all you guys someday at a future FMForward event at
Me too.
whatever
Live
university
FM
or college. Yeah. And I would love to have drinks with all of you afterwards.
And we can have t-shirts that say, "Can you see my screen?"
Yes.
But
No, the t-shirt says you're muted.
I was going to say, are you still on mute? You are on mute.
You're on mute.
All right, I'm assigning now. I have to do this all individually, so it's gonna take me a sec, but you all should be receiving pop-ups to join a room.
That's great.
If someone could
Thank
be a
you.
moderator to report back, that would be great.
Yeah, if we have the designated moderators in there, but if we don't, just elect somebody and kind of give a little bit of feedback from what you take out of that breakout room.
That'd be great. Can you guys pop the questions into the chat, please?
Sure.
Just
Dawn,
in
can
case
you-
we don't have a moderator.
All right. Yeah.
And how long are we in the breakout rooms for?
We'll be in the breakout room for about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10
Okay.
minutes.
And I'll put, I'll get the timer going once I get everyone in, and then I'll give everyone reminders on the broadcast.
Great. Thank you, Ashley.
No problem. Sorry, this is taking a hot minute.
Don't worry. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Join.
All right.
I'm fine.
Hmm?
Oh, are you gonna stay here?
No, I was just putting the questions into the chat,
Oh, okay.
right? Some people should be able to see that. I'm going to go join a room.
They should.
I'm going to go to room 2. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, Mary. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm gonna put you in a breakout room so you can start those discussions with folks. Great. You're muted.
Ashley, Tom's in that room. Can you put me in another room?
Oh, yeah. I think there's someone in everyone. Move to.
I just don't want to be where Tom is.
You don't want to be where Tom is.
I want to be where Tom is. That's silly.
Oh, you were in room 3. 2 and 4. That should be good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, there we go. Okay. we're
That's good. No, it's good. We had, in our breakout room, we had a good conversation. We had a couple of higher ed people in there, which was great. And they were kind of talking about, undoing what we've done to get everybody back, which was, or get a percentage of people back with that de-densification. What do we do to get people back in? How long is that going to take? Phil's from Staples was talking about how their plan of integrating their people back into the office is sort of a 90-day plan and ramping up the numbers to get into the office. Dawn, how was your room? And then we can jump into some others as well.
Well, I'm going to totally push off to Chris, the moderator of the room, because I came in late and left early. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had some great conversations about just kind of how people want to phase in. So it's a lot of phased approach, looking at maybe end of May to beginning of June, but again, keeping the goalposts moving. So if that doesn't look right, changing it again and changing it again. What does, a hoteling look like? Working with iOffice and figuring out, can people come in and do the hoteling if they don't have a permanent station? are people going to be requiring vaccines? What kind of health measures are they going to be taking before they walk into the office? Temperature checks, things like that. So there's a lot of things thrown around, but I think the biggest takeaway I would get would be the phased in approach and just kind of trying to keep up with that.
One of the topics we didn't really get to, but what was on there was what's that marker for people? What is it? What's the signal that says, you know what, we can start really putting the pedal, to the floor. We can accelerate this process a little bit more. Did anybody have, something that was a metric or, whether it was from the COVID counts and where they are, whether it's the governor saying everything can be open? Does anybody did anybody talk about that in any of the rooms?
Well, Carolyn and I were both in the same room, and we're both in the construction industry, and our offices are open. We have a lot of space and people are taking the proper measures, but and they've been open. They've kind of, I think it closed down in the middle, but by the summer they were open, and we've been very lucky. So I think it's just keeping those precautions up and having people take proper, if you don't feel good, you don't come to work, type of thing. But I don't think we didn't talk about having like a specific thing because we're already there, but.
Gotcha.
We are like partially open. So we were at a very reduced capacity back like last summer. And then in the fall, when the numbers looked really good and everything, it was like, all right, everyone's back. And then the numbers started to go up again. So we pumped the brakes on it. So we are at a limited capacity right now. But I think everyone is being really good about everyone that's in is being great about wearing masks and separating. And to Chris's point, I think gone are the days of showing up to the office with a hacking cough and a runny nose and feeling like crap. I just think people have always been so hesitant to use their sick time, and I think this has changed everything. And now if you don't feel well, people are just going to say, you know what, work from home or just take the day. So that will be one good thing. Hopefully we won't be getting each other sick as much.
Yeah.
I think too, that
That's good.
the schools have to come back online and get into a rhythm that would allow families to, get into a regimen again. I think, with the remote learning and all of that, it's screwed up a lot of people's schedules, and they're not sure yet as to what direction that's going to go for those that have children, and that puts everybody else, every week there's a process for the whole family,
Yeah, I think you're right, Phil. I think that the rhythm is missing all around, like the hours in which you're working or the hours that you're logging in. And if you are commuting, one day it takes 45 minutes to get there, the next it takes an hour and a half. You're like, hey, where did all these people come from all of a sudden?
Right.
There's no rhythm to anything these days.
Nope.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I'm seeing with some of the clients' hesitation is, can they force people to come back to work if people aren't feeling comfortable? And so kind of what is that threshold that you figure out to say, yes, come this date, we're going to require you to come back X amount of days a week. And then what's the response if someone pushes back and says, well, I don't feel safe and comfortable coming back into the office yet?
I think there was a ruling on that. That question was asked very early on, I read, and technically an employer can ask a person to come back to the office, and if they choose not to, they can take the next steps and part ways. But in today's world, I don't think that any employer is going to step up and take that tack unless, they've gone well above and beyond, and the person that refuses to come back is just being difficult. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good point too. And for what kind of we're looking at is Liberty Mutual. We don't, other than essential staff, we don't have a return to work. Again, it keeps moving, but it's voluntary. So when we do deem it safe for people to come back, whatever percentage of the business unit that's able to come back, it's going to be voluntary. And to this point, other companies that have tried to do that, let's just say it's 30% are eligible to go back. They're still seeing like some very small percentages, but I'm optimistic. I mean, well, the CDC person's not super optimistic, but I'm optimistic with some of the vaccinations in summer, and hopefully we do start to see when people are, other than say construction and healthcare, where again nothing really changed other than the very beginning of the pandemic. You'd hope to start to see when people are volunteering to come into the work, those percentages do start to hit the 25 or 30%. But again, it's still a little bit of a moving target, but I'd like to see some optimism or light at the end of the tunnel this summer.
It comes back down to that rhythm aspect, right? So once you're able to start establishing, so it will be a slow roll back if it's not mandatory. And if it is mandatory, people will probably start looking for different lines of employment. So, and that's the thing, is if you're willing to lose the talent or expect a certain percentage to move on, then go right ahead. But I think we had a bit of a discussion about, if you're able to get your work done in this environment, then why would you force people back in unless your company culture is probably lacking and you're trying to build that up?
I asked that question of the task force, are we gonna say people, you have to come back to work? And the answer was, well, no, that's not, that would be insensitive. So, well, what's the impact? And HR said that we would lose people. They would just leave. They would go somewhere else where the work from home or the hybrid model is more prevalent, and you'd lose talent. So, you gotta put that into the equation, and before you make a decision overall, is which direction you're gonna go.
So I work for an architecture firm, Margulies Peruzzi, and that's the conversation that we're having with a lot of clients, is no one wants to tell their employees they have to come back. So the conversations are, how can we make the office an asset so people will want to come in? What can we provide there? What spaces or amenities or whatever can we provide in the office that people might not have at home that will want them to come back into the office moving forward, once they feel safe, of course. But so that's the kind of conversations that we're having to kind of offset that need of people to want or need to come into the office.
That's what kind of makes it difficult with, like someone had mentioned, traffic. One day it can take you 45 minutes, the next day it's an hour and a half. But if you have, everybody has been affected differently as a result of this pandemic. Some have lost loved ones, some have other different situations that they've gone through, and you could have the most sterile office, in the city, and you're still going to get some employees who don't feel comfortable being back in larger groups anymore. So that's where part of that unpredictability comes in, because you can't say, okay, we're going to plan for 80% capacity like we used to, or however much it might be. You might have 10% one day and 50% the next. So it's very difficult when trying to understand what your space needs are going to be going forward.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this a few times in some of these groups, is that, the pilot program's done, folks. We're all working from home, most of us right now. So it's not like, should we try it? Let's see if we're productive. I mean, it's done, so they can't use that as, maybe some can, but we're doing it. So I think choices, that word choice just keeps coming up, and options for folks.
I think my wife is lobbying for full-time return to work.
For you?
Yes, absolutely.
I get it, Steve.
At our organization,
But, I think,
organization,
go ahead.
at the Federal Home Loan Bank, we had absolutely no work from home, work remote policy prior to this. We are currently working 100% remote, other than one or two office services team that are just there for mail packages and that sort of thing. We, like everybody else, have chosen return to office dates and moved them repeatedly. We currently have our return to office date set for July 1st. And that announcement was made that we will be 100% return to the office on July 1st. We talked about, what those assumptions are or what those metrics are in order for that to happen. We are going on, all employees will have had the opportunity to get a vaccine. They're eligible and have had the opportunity. we're not mandating at this point. We're not going to mandate that they get them, but we want to say that they at least have the opportunity to get one. We're also saying the assumption would be we won't have to maintain that 6 feet anymore, because our thought process on that is if you're back in the office, but you still have to maintain 6 feet and you can't host meetings and everybody's going to be taking meetings at their desk just as they are right now at their homes, then what's the point of bringing everybody back? And we actually have already had employees resign and leave the company because they don't want to wait around and see if we our management will eventually decide to create a more remote work policy, just because it was never allowed before. And it's not being discussed as an option now. They've just chosen not to wait around and even see, and they've already left.
I mean, one of the things that sticks out with what you're talking about and what Phil was talking about in our recently with the kids not being in school and how that affects people in Massachusetts. I mean, we're supposed to have a pretty big return come April 5th. And I talked with a few people that are kind of holding back their kids initially through the summer because until May, because they feel like it's too much for them to get their kids back into school for April, May, and then they're back out in June. I don't know if that's something that's come up with the thought process and the decisions on the timeline and when you want people back in the office, whether it's July or whether it's September or what, but that's something coming up. And then the other thing I saw just before I got on this roundtable was Governor Baker announcing that more of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was shipping next week. So they were going to have a lot more doses coming online in Massachusetts. I suppose that was going to be ramping up. Maybe that affects the timeline as well. I don't know. But,
interesting. Yeah,
So, go ahead, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say, in our group, we're talking, I mean, it's fascinating. I know it's the 7th round table, but everyone I'm always looking forward to see what other people are doing and have to say. And what we had in our group was one of the questions, like if people are able to go, or what's preventing people from coming back, and like, hey, is it safety, or no, they want to get back to the office. But one of them was they made a good point from a mileage on where they live, where they were doing 25,000 miles a year driving, where last year they did 5,000 miles. So that makes sense. But then one that was actually pretty funny, but I'm sure we can relate to it if you're working from home, was the laundry. She's like, you have the work attire, you have the workout attire, and then you have like the pajama attire. And if I'm just rolling out of bed and going to my computer, I'm not doing much laundry. So there's an array of different reasons, but that's the first time I heard that one. So it's pretty funny. And I guess like people could probably relate to it.
Yeah, that's like your car getting 3 weeks to the gallon back in April last year.
I had somebody approach me and said, well, if I'm required, or if I'm driving to work every day and I'm coming into the office and the person that sits next to me is working remote from home, shouldn't I be paid more than that person because I have additional costs to get to and from work and this person doesn't? So, I mean, I just said, geez, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, but that person's paying for the expenses at home and paying for equipment and stuff like that. So.
Oh, and they're paying mentally, as I can see in some of the comments here. Like there are people wanting to do the happy dance as soon as those kids get back in.
Yeah. It's
so you
I have
right.
not. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never heard that comment. Wow.
Am I the only one that feels like, hey, like when we took these jobs, they involved going into an office, like,
right?
Like you, at some point, you have to go back to work. And yeah, I think companies like my company has implemented a work from home policy, which we never had before. We were expected to be in the office full time before, and now we're going to be allowed to work from home 1 day a week. But aside from that, like, at some point we have to go to work.
I'm right there with you, Carolyn. I completely agree with you. I'm like, put on your big boy pants, get to work, stop crying. It's a job, do it.
Yes.
And Phil, you bring up a good point, because I did hear of some companies providing a small stipend for working from home to cover like your extra electric bills and everything else now that you're using it. But then I haven't followed up on where it went, but I know that the governor of New Hampshire sued the governor of Massachusetts for people who are working remotely, who live in New Hampshire, but their office is in Massachusetts, but arguing that why should they pay mass taxes if they're working from home?
Ooh, there's another good question.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that with the interstate stuff. So a lot of companies are struggling with this right now.
Even if they're working from home in New Hampshire, the revenue is still generated in Massachusetts.
Right.
So, it's, the New Hampshire governor should think about, what he's presenting, because it's still, you live in New Hampshire, you're going to be paying mass taxes if you take a job in Massachusetts.
Right.
So.
And that happened pre-COVID too.
I'm sorry, Ashley, what'd you say?
I was just going to say that happened pre-COVID too. We had folks, who lived in Florida at my old job at Ropes and Gray, but because they were based out of the Boston office, they got taxed based off Massachusetts taxes. That's not new. That existed before COVID. Yeah.
That's like professional sports players have to file tax returns in like multiple states, don't they? Because they make money in multiple states. That they play games all over the place and they make money in multiple states. So
yeah,
it's not a new thing,
All right, so we have another question for you, but we're going to stay here rather than go to the breakout rooms, because I feel like the conversation is moving around pretty well. If you are trying to say something and can't get it in, maybe put your hand up and we'll try and help you get into the conversation. Yeah, or put it in the chat for sure. Yeah, so our next question that we wanted to talk about is, during this pandemic, how has the new circumstances changed or had any effect on your capital plan?
It blew it up. That's what it did.
Want everybody to jump in at once?
Phil, you've talked a lot. So you guys have worked through this.
Shut up. I'm just going to shut up.
Some things were actually expedited because the people aren't in the office. So, planning on off hours work or projects that way, it's able to get in during the day and kind of reduce the timeline. So that was like an added bonus, but there was a pause in there for a while.
So I had a construction project that something very similar happened, where it had already started construction before everything shut down. And then once 2 weeks later, when they decided, okay, construction is important and you can go back to that. They got that project done in half the amount of time that they were supposed to, because nobody was there.
Yeah, I had an experience.
What's really funny is the chickens
do. Things did get actually expedited at the early pandemic, which was nice. But I think as we've been in this a little over a year now, I wonder how are companies feeling about what their thought was 12, 18 months ago.
Well, all kidding aside, we had put together a 2020 capital plan, and obviously everything got put on hold on that. And then I had to pick and choose off of that list for an abbreviated capital plan for 2021, because again, we sell office products and supplies and business was way down. So we had to look at life and safety issues and, items that we needed to do. And that's kind of what we did to focus on that. So that's how it impacted us.
Yeah, at Suffolk, we had a small push there in the beginning because we had to open a dorm before the beginning of before September, so that we had more bed capacity so that we could spread kids out. So it went from being like, yeah, we definitely want to get this open, to like, if we don't get this open, it'll be so bad. So we had to push that through. But once that project finished, we kind of had to put a standstill. And I think it's actually kind of good, because I think that there will be so much of a shakeup in the administrative side and the education side of higher ed, that like some of the ideas of what we wanted to do in the strategic plan, the essence of the idea is the same, but what would that turn into? So it's like, okay, we want to do more career services. Before that was building a gigantic center. Is the center the same now? Is it smaller? Is it partially online? Are these people now in different states supporting alumni in different places? Like, so it's kind of like, yeah, let's pause and figure out what we're actually gonna, what the future looks like. So it created somewhat of a helpful like financial pause that we actually have to take. And then it's gonna allow us to give us more time to come up with like a better incarnation of those strategic plan stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
So in my municipality, because they knew revenue was going to be down, tax bases, and they have a meals tax here that took a huge hit. They had to go back and not just capital, but operating and start reducing until they were aware of what they'd get for additional funding. So priority was everything stopped. And then they were only doing emergency-based stuff. And now recently they've received some funding, so they're going to kick back up. But it's all based on the income.
So definitely a mix of things going on. And again, we keep thinking we're going back and maybe this is it. I'm very hopeful this time. Most of the signs seem to be pointing that direction. I can see by, again, a lot of chat, people are, most of the people I'm talking to want to get back to at least partially. So I'm seeing a lot of people talking, yeah, I can, if I need to work from home a couple of days a week, I've got a project going on, I need that space, that's great. But if I need to talk to some people, I need to see people, I need to, have some collaboration face to face. They're looking really forward to that. I mean, that's where I am. I'm wanting to be more and more out in front of people. I'm an outside sales guy. That's how I'm put together. My mileage on my cars is way down, but my mileage on my mind is way up.
I think Michael from AstraZeneca, he brought up some really good points. In fact, about the collaboration areas that the neighborhoods. I use the word hoteling. I guess it's a swear word at AstraZeneca, but that was an interesting concept. You could take a cubed area and clean out the middle of it and put in some collaborative spaces and very easily and put people at ease when they come into the office, if they are working 2 days a week from home, 3 days in, something like that. So something to think about,
Yeah, prior to this, we were going great guns to try to reduce people's personal space, their personal footprint in the corporate space. Shrinking down. If you had 50 cubicles in an area before, you wanted to put 65 in that area, and you wanted to open it up to try to give that feeling of space. But now maybe it's maybe we want to have those open areas, and maybe not assigned seating. Maybe it's better. And the clean desk. There were a lot of people talking about the clean desk at the office. At the end of the day, your desk has to be clean so we can completely, wipe it down, sanitize it.
So we have another poll to ask folks, which I think might stem a little bit of conversation as well. So a slightly different subject. Ashley, can you put up our second poll?
I can.
Specifically worded as an incentive, not a yes or a no, but.
Does that mean employment as incentive?
No, that wasn't what we were meaning.
Yeah, I'm going on video, okay?
I was trying to keep it out of the political front.
But you don't have to, but are they going to incentivize them?
Yeah.
That would depend on the incentive.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are some people talking about cash incentives actually for this as well. I've heard that discussed before.
We're at the law firm that I work at. We're allowing people to take excused time off to get the vaccine. And if they are having symptoms following the vaccine, They do not have to use a vacation day. So even if it's 2 days, 3 days of not feeling well, we felt that was an incentive to have people get vaccinated.
Heard that, yeah.
That's what we're doing at Suffolk too.
Yeah, that could be a deterrent for people if they're hearing that others are down for 4 or 5 days after they had the vaccine. They don't want to use up their sick time or their vacation time for it. I could see why they may not go that route.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's so funny. It's on twofold. It sounds like a very strong like HR or even legal on how to get out of trouble. But it's funny when you look at things, whether companies used to do, say, biometric screening and stuff like that, they would offer incentives, or the 10K a day, they would offer incentives. And then I think just because of the pandemic and COVID, you relook at everything you're able to do, even from like pre-pandemic, if people have the flu or whatnot, and I'm not sure if the flu is technically a HIPAA thing or not, but people like, oh, he has the flu, he's not coming in. And then as you start going through COVID, you're like, can I share this medical information? And me personally, had to go to HR. They're like, yeah, no, you can't share that. Like, oh, okay. It's changing the playing field on what we're traditionally, I guess, used to. So the incentive on the vaccination is, I'm sure that's a loaded question, and the legal teams in HR are trying to balance what that may look like.
I can jump in a little bit on UKG. So we're toying with the idea to come back to the office. We're going to require the vaccine for phase 1 and possibly phase 2. No incentive there. Just if you want to come to the office, you just have to be vaccinated. We're not making it mandatory for employees in general, overarching, but definitely looking to require that. But the legal team is definitely getting a few ulcers, trying to work through the logistics on that one.
So that's interesting. So it's almost as if they're not making it a requirement, other than if you want to come into the office, you need the vaccination. So the other alternative is you're working from home forever if you don't want the vaccination.
So it would just be for so we're kind of planning like a 3 or 4 phase approach. And we're voting on that next week. Hopefully, I'm hoping for a 4-phased approach, and then phase 1 and phase 2, you would just have to be vaccinated to come into the office. And then after that, then it would be, so you don't have to be, it's not a permanent solution. It's just to get people kind of back.
Yeah.
That'll all depend on the vaccine availability too, I think.
Well, that's the big thing. And we have a few essential employees that are on site and have been on site the whole time. And some of them are, kind of the young 20s that might not be eligible for quite some time either. So that's what we're trying to figure out, all those little nuances.
See, I think we have like round 8 and round 9 of roundtables of COVID still to come.
No, it changes by the minute.
I know, right?
Well, that and too, like I've heard from this particular group, some people are talking July, everyone returns, some are September, everybody's back, some are back there now. I mean, the return to work conversation could very well go on for another 6 months as people are still returning, hopefully, to work. Yeah, I think we could be talking about this again in the summer.
Well, hopefully not. I just got my text that I can go get my shot, so.
Nice.
That's good.
It's awesome.
Phil, hold out until they give you some bonus or something.
Yeah, listen, see what you can do about getting incentivized to do that.
They sent me an email, I signed up, and I guess this is good news, but they're not, because they have to drive out to Springfield to get it, but.
Yeah. That's good. That's good news.
Okay. So we have a couple more minutes. I'm going to ask one more question that we had for the group, and it's involving being back in the office again. And I know this is a swear word in some companies, so use it whatever word that you want, but hoteling, hot seating, whatnot. If you had it before, would you go back to it again? Or is this prompting another seating arrangement? Anyone?
So I can just say what we're doing in the hoteling. We do have, they call it the flex space or unassigned seating, where you would have, let's say I'm in the office today, someone else is sitting in my seat tomorrow. And there's a program for people that don't know what Hoteller is. It's essentially like picking a flight. You can see which ones are available and which ones are fully occupied. It is checkerboarded now, so when people do return to work, whatever that looks like, it does, you're spaced out. But looking at the way the policy reads, it comes to find out that it's actually, again, this is only our company, but people could have differences of opinions. But the way we have the Virex, like the wipes or the sanitizer wipes, the unassigned seating they're saying is actually recommended, where it's a clean desk policy and the individual that comes there in the morning needs to wipe down their desk. They have their own lockers and stuff with their keyboards and mouse and whatnot. But so technically, if I come in the morning, I wipe down my desk in the morning, and then prior to leaving, I'm wiping down my desk. The next morning, John Smith, he comes in, he's disinfecting his desk again. So in theory, it's getting disinfected twice prior to one person actually using it. So that's just kind of the hoteling conversations we're having and the policy we have around it.
Now, can I assume that the desk is cleared? There's nothing on it. It's simply a surface. It doesn't have a phone. It doesn't have random office supplies. It doesn't have any other.
Yep, absolutely. In fact, like even Angela or Steve, they've lived it, where a lot of the stuff is just through Teams. We don't even have phones. It's just their laptop. And do you guys bring your keyboard to your locker?
Yeah, we bring it. You come to the desk, and there's just a docking station and a monitor, and you bring everything else. There's truly nothing else there. I think there's a coat hook, and that's about it.
That's reducing clutter for sure.
Yeah, we have ours set up the same way. Only our hoteling desks are available on even and odd days. So if a desk is numbered even, then it's available, say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then odd numbered desks are Tuesday, Thursday, and that basically gives us a 24-hour turnaround time to disinfect the surface and let it sit without anyone using it. I guess that's if you have the luxury of space and don't need to accommodate a ton of people, but it does give us a window to make sure that it is disinfected. We have a day porter that comes in 8 a.m. each morning, which we had prior to COVID, but now it's even more of a focus for her. We give her a list the night before of all the desks and conference rooms and everything that were used throughout the day, and she'll go through and specifically disinfect all of those areas first thing in the morning before anyone gets in.
So, I mean, that's awesome that you guys are doing that. And then we had a previous program where the gentleman from Harvard was telling us that really the contact piece isn't really where the spread happens. So it's, I don't want to say overkill, but it's a great addition to. So even if it's not hit exactly, just that gap in between your seating should definitely help reduce that.
It would be great to have him come back.
He was really good.
Can we get him back again? That was an awesome session.
I follow him on LinkedIn, and all of his webinars or articles or everything that he puts out is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I have to remember who that was, because I think a lot of people might like to follow him.
It was Joe Allen. He was the public health. Yeah. And he was actually really good. He actually helped solve, I mean, obviously people, I'll repeat it for some of the folks that may not have been on the phone call, but elevators when people return to work was a huge scare point. Yeah. And he kind of made the comment, he's like, no, people are overthinking this. They're having all these people queued up in the hallway with long times and duration. He's like, just get the people in there. The critical part is no talking. He's like, just don't have them talk on the elevator, because when you get into intensity, it was frequency and duration. He's like, you're on an elevator ride, it's short, the frequency's not long, the duration's not long. And if you keep people from not talking, your exposure is very minimal. And that was like genius insight. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. And like the return to work meetings, like, guys, this is what we're doing for the elevators. You still have like the minimal capacity, but he had some great insight on kind of what to anticipate or what to expect. And I mean, that's a lot of us here are dealing with like the white papers and what to do and employee safety and all that other good stuff. So it was just, again, good insight.
Yeah, his latest one is around airflow.
So how great is that to take away that horribly awkward elevator conversation? Don't
just
talk.
posted a link to that, what Andrew just mentioned. I
Oh,
just
thank
posted that
you.
in chat, a link to it. But I also wanted to ask on the area workstations that you offer, the hoteling or the term you use, do you provide monitors to staff or they just use laptops?
Yep, at Liberty, we have dual monitors at each station and they just put their laptop in a docking station and it all comes up on the monitor.
So at Hancock, we actually went to universal docking station so that it could go, because we have people with Macs and people with all kinds of different generations of PCs. And that eliminated that, and it's dual monitors.
Right. Those are very good. Those are all good insights. Yeah, Jen did send the link to Joe Allen's stuff, so that's great. Thank you. I think one of the things that I think that I take away from this is that the flexibility that companies, higher ed, all these institutions have shown over the years that we can do what we need to do if we have to do it, if we're forced to do it. So it's kind of going to be it's going to look like a very interesting experiment as we start to pull all the data out of this last year. So I'm looking forward to it, but I am looking very much forward to return to office and seeing people in person again. So.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know why I just posted a weird symbol and avatar image, but I just put the link. I just put the link to the IFMA talk with Joseph Allen in the chat. So if you want to go back and rewatch that, you can.
Awesome.
Oh, great. Thanks, Ashley.
No problem.
And I think, Tom, to your point, what's interesting is how quickly things could happen that we were previously told would take months and weeks to do. I know I have one client who, for you to be issued a laptop, it would take 6 to 8 weeks. And then all of a sudden, in the span of a week, they were able to image and issue thousands and thousands of laptops to employees.
Right. Yeah, they have to. Necessity,
Yeah. I had
warrants that you do that.
Yeah, the work from home program became very, very focused on getting the laptops or computers or whatnot out the door, to the point that they were pilfering from any empty seat they could find for monitors and such.
Yep.
Which, we thought was going to be a big worry when everybody came back. They weren't going to have monitors, but they haven't gotten
2
back.
weeks later. It was only going to be a couple of weeks.
Exactly. It doesn't appear to be a problem.
Well, it's only March 31st. We just started this.
True.
Oh, perfect.
2 weeks ago.
That is 2 weeks. Well, actually, it's 2 weeks in a year. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah, but Don, you bring up a good point, because I have a few clients now that are facing that exact same problem, that people took stuff home. So now, do you let them keep it and do you replace so that they have a setup in both, or are you going to try to make people bring stuff back?
We're going through that now. We have teams doing an inventory of all of our offices in preparation for when we do go back and are figuring out what's missing, how many monitors do we need, what have people taken that we now need to replace. We're not going to ask them to take it back, because I feel like that would just be impossible to coordinate at this point. So we'll be getting new.
Well, I think we can have a whole other discussion too on the hybrid situation. Again, you took all your stuff home. Now what's going to be in the office and what is coming back and forth. But it is 5 o'clock. I want to be cognizant of people's time. I hope that you found this conversation enjoyable. We love that you all joined us today, and it's all about the FMs and what's happening in your world. And we want to give you every opportunity we can to converse with each other. So great.
Thank you so much, Tom, for leading us in this chat. Appreciate it. And hope we see everyone tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. for our academics, COVID, and FMs. It's a panel discussion with Boston University, Babson College, and Brown University. So
show up
right there.
Don't even question it.
Thanks, guys.
It's going to be great.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
I'm not talking, that's why I can say that.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, wow.